Good morning. Welcome to Baltpool Biomass Day. We are happy to welcome you online. And today, together with the market experts, we are going to discuss the most topical trends on biomass market and the trends that are relevant to the entire Baltic Sea region. Together with me, we have Tomas, Jorudas, the commercial director, and Vaidotas, Jonutis, our trading manager at Baltpool. And we will also have two guests online whom I will introduce, and we will see them a bit later. In the beginning, for introduction, I would like to say that our event is being recorded, and we will share this record with everyone a day or few days later on our YouTube channel. I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that our event is interpreted into English and Lithuanian languages. So you may choose the language by pressing the globe icon and choosing the language you would like to listen to the meeting. As for questions to our delegates, you may ask the questions at any time on Slido by choosing the Baltpool channel. Without any delay, I would like to introduce our first presentation that will be delivered by Vaidotas Jonutis. Vaidotas Jonutis leads trading operations at Baltpool and has a deep understanding of biomass markets, price formation, trading patterns, and seasonal trends. And his insights are grounded in daily exchange data, providing a clear view on how the Baltic biomass market evolves in real time. So, Vaidotas, the floor is yours. Thank you, Justina, for such a warm welcome. I'm delighted. Good morning, everyone. We usually meet in May to discuss the events of the past season. This year, taking a look at what's happening behind our windows, it does not really look like May. It seems like February or November, and we get the impression that the weather is like it was during the heating season. So let us start from how it all went over the past year, from the exchange perspective. The trading volumes in the three Baltic states look like this. In Lithuania, we had roughly 5% growth. In Latvia, we had a decline. And in Estonia, the level remained roughly the same. So all in all, we have a little growth during the heating season if we count it from October to March. So we are happy with these results. But probably the focus should be on prices and why we all have come together today. So when it comes to prices, you may see that Lithuania, compared to last year, the prices have dropped to 21.80. In Latvia, the price is 22.01. And in Estonia, there was a slight increase in price to 21.34. So taking a look at these figures, what impresses most that almost all three Baltic states have very similar prices, and there are many reasons for that. And where is the principle of the chicken or egg? And it's very difficult to tell what depended on what. But the differences between states that we had in the past are not so evident anymore. I'm not sure how it is going to develop in the future, and whether that is an achievement or whether that tells something about the coordination and an alignment of the markets, this like we have in the energy market. So the future will tell, but the trend is rather interesting, I should say. And we will be able to discuss this later. Why we are not showing Poland, because the volumes in Poland does not really represent the biofuel market, even though we have some transactions in Poland. And we have quite a good price level in the state which is south of Lithuania. I hope that when the time comes, we will start publishing the prices from Poland too. Now, one of the topics, or relevant topics that I would like to address in the biofuel market, that are the differences between long-term and spot price contracts. And let's see how these possibilities to work an extra profit looked like, or a higher income for suppliers looked like. Historically, long-term and spot contracts were different in almost 90% of all the periods in the past. And this year was very different. The prices of long-term and spot contracts were very similar, and in Lithuania, this difference is only about 6%. Spot is a bit higher, while in Latvia, that difference is only 3%. But long-term contracts are more expensive. In Estonia, we had the first long-term contracts, and the price of those are very close to the spot market prices. And on the graph, you may see it, this dot. Since we have fewer statistics for the past periods, but the situation is rather identical in all three Baltic states. And I will get back to this principle of the chicken and egg. Long-term contract providers did not really expect, while entering those contracts, the situation like we had in May last year. The situation has been changing over the year, but average sizes really surprised us because they were so similar in all three Baltic states. I'm not sure if we can conclude that long-term contracts and pricing of long-term contracts has no longer does not longer have these risk premiums that we have, or maybe that's simply a coincidence, but we have the situation which we had like some 5 to 4 years ago, when there wasn't a great difference between long-term contracts and spot contracts. Let us move on to our next slide and the amount of long-term contracts. This last year, during the previous heating season, the 24-25 heating season, the market was diversified in Lithuania and Latvia, so the number of contracts is very similar. Majority of the contracts were long-term contracts in the market, and that is a bit worrying fact. Despite the fact that we have been persuading buyers for a number of years to buy on spot contracts and to develop this part of this share of the market, and to decouple from long-term contracts, because this gives more maneuver, more freedom to maneuver. But the current situation has surprised us from a different perspective. And in all states where spot market is well developed, this year compared to the last year, both in Lithuania and Latvia, we had a decrease in long-term contracts. In Latvia, it was more evident. In Lithuania, it was not so evident, but it still exists. And to be frank, this nuance of the market, well, to mildly put it, is worrying, and the regulator, at least in Lithuania, has already paid attention to this. And maybe there is too much of this investment speculative risk from the buyer side, because the pricing allows to include a lot of risk into heating prices for consumers. So we only now have the light debates about it. Everybody sees this, everybody knows this. So at the end of this slide, I believe that I need to remind that diversification is a good thing when you use it wisely. And having in mind the fact that Vilnius cogeneration power plant, which accounts for 15% of the entire market, they had a larger share, more than a half of long-term contracts, has shrunk even more. So the market really had a high risk due to that. As for the future, you should be learning and exploring those diversification possibilities. The cities which take part in tenders in the mid-month, they have different incentives for long-term contracts. So the regulator has been informed of the fact, and they know about the situation, and I believe that the regulator will draw attention to that by amending the regulatory environment. Let's talk a little about how the past year or the past heating season looked like from the heat degree perspective, or what the what the outside temperature was compared to the previous years. So this graph, well, I read this graph very simply. I take the number of days when the weather outside was in between -10 to -5 to +10. And this means that the maximum amount of biofuel equipment is operated, and they use the entire capacity of the grid. And if we need we have the temperature lower than -5, then additional equipment kicks in, and it helps us deal with the need for heating. Gas equipment is used most often because the fuel is even more expensive, but the equipment is rather cheap. So we know this fact for ages and ages. So if we compare the results in all Baltic states for the previous years, there's no wonder these all three cities are rather close to each other. So we had the warmest winter compared, if we compare winters of the past 3 years, and and the heat degree, or the parameters that needed to be heated by incinerating the biomass, we had the lowest amount of these days, of these heat degrees over the past 3 years. And that, I believe, is one of the key factors in our assessment why we have the situation on the biofuel market what it is now, when prices are very low and spot market responded to the price rise only during the Christmas period, during the very peak season. And the higher problem, I believe, was not the outside temperature, but the day of holidays, the day of days off, when the supply of biofuel went down due to holidays. But taking a look at January and February, only in February the temperature was lower compared to last year, but all the other months they were warmer compared to the previous year. So global trend of this global warming was very well expressed. And if the situation continues this way, I have nothing positive to tell. But I believe that we are speaking about random quantities and sizes, and the heating seasons differ every year. So I don't think that we should not make any far-reaching conclusions just yet. And my next slide, it represents the situation of biomass suppliers and their shares on the market. Even though this graph is very colorful and it's not very easy to read it, but you will be able to analyze it later on when you stop the video on your screen later on. The point is that in all three Baltic states, the top 10 suppliers are more or less control a similar share of the market. And that share of the market does not really fluctuate. The biggest changes we had in the Lithuanian market when we shifted from so-called free share or the small players of the market has increased from 41 to 47%. In Latvia and Estonia, this free share, this upper part of the graph, has almost remained stable. Among the top 10 participants, there are some changes. And in Lithuania, two companies dropped out from the list of top 10, and two new ones were added to the list, to the top 10 list. So I should probably be more specific by saying that one of those companies actually returned to that top 10, and so actually just one company dropped out of that top 10. While in Estonia and Latvia, if you see the two leading companies in Latvia and Estonia, they shrank significantly over the past year. In Estonia, one of the companies has grown a lot and taken a significant share of the market compared to previous years. The participants are changing, the market players are changing. And I believe that these changes should stabilize, and it wasn't an easy year for suppliers. And rather low prices of biomass and biofuel introduces and leads to certain changes in companies and their financial condition, which is not so positive. And my next graph, it relates to biofuel and the most expensive source, that is firewood, the price dynamics in all three Baltic states. So the point of this graph is probably the correlation between the red and green line, the gap between the red and green lines. We intentionally are making these graphs as this just to show that the fluctuations are very similar. The biomass price directly depends on the price of firewood or the raw material price. And the question is, what determines what? Whether the biofuel price determines firewood price or firewood price determines biofuel price. So it's only you who can tell this answer. And we may have different opinions every time. But if we take a look at this graph and how it is represented here, we have to think of one particular nuance, that in Latvia, firewood prices are taken from public forestry companies. In Latvia, this red line should be a bit lower because delivery costs, which are reimbursed by the National Public Forestry Company. So this would lead to this smaller gap. So the situation is worst in terms of suppliers, probably is in Lithuania, because the raw material price is almost highest, and the prices are lowest, and this gap is not beneficial for suppliers. So that is it. And let us move on to the next slide, which basically deals with the same topic. The same figures, they are only displayed on a single graph. All the prices of biomass are included into one graph, and while firewood prices are included in the other graph. And while we see that the biofuel prices, just like I mentioned before, they were rather similar in all three Baltic states, and we trade in similar prices in all three Baltic states, this means that there shouldn't be much of the cross-border trading, because importing biofuel is rather pricey, and it does not pay off. It does not give any additional benefit. So this situation is rather, well, I would say, is resolved. On the other hand, the prices of firewood, even though in this graph they don't seem to be very similar, but at the moment, and the reality today is that those prices are very, very similar. And closer to April, the prices started to fall, but this graph does not represent the very, very latest prices after the heating season ends. And a brief observation, this slide represents Lithuania in particular. Since I could not present information from Latvia and Estonia on this, so this statistics shows how many vehicles top 20 suppliers have, because it shows the expectation of market players and their vision of the future. Are they likely to grow? Are they likely to increase their volumes and their operations? So these figures come from Lithuania, and they are rather interesting, even though we had very poor few past years. So the fleet of suppliers in N3 category has been growing rather steadily, and that is rather interesting. I cannot give the figures from Latvia and Estonia, but I think that over time I will be able to find those databases and find that data. So in my opinion, this is a rather interesting and contradicting aspect, which relates to this, that suppliers are rather positive about their future and they continue investing. But of course, it may be very inertive investment. And many of those vehicles, including logistical vehicles and other vehicles, they only reach the suppliers a year or two later after they have ordered them, those vehicles. Well, and briefly about the forthcoming season, a rather complicated question. When we forecast the coming season, we usually read the statistics, and our forecasts usually are based on analysis of the statistics. So the first slide is very elementary, and it shows how firewood costs and how we can forecast the prices of biofuel based on that price. So these graphs usually coincide historically, so we may try to forecast the next year based on these prices. So currently, the biofuel prices for the next season are not so evident because we only have one long-term contract concluded so far. But based on the price of firewood price now, it does not seem that next year will be somewhat exceptional. I get the impression that biofuel price should remain more or less the same during the next season. And if we compare it to, well, if we compare it to the previous season, of course, for suppliers, I believe that they may have some arguments to tell, and it's high time to express those arguments if they have any on this. But the point is that we don't really expect any change in pricing. And the next slide tells about statistical analysis during the heating season and the change in prices during the heating season compared to the price which is formed in April and May. So to put it more visually, I take the price of the previous heating season and I see what is the price of biofuel in April and May, and I see the change in percentage points in this price. And what really surprised me was that this shift usually is some 20%. And if this change is higher than 20%, so this means there's a price drop higher than 20%, let's say like we had in 2023 when the price drop amounted to 29%. So statistically, next year, it leads to the price drop. If the price does not drop by 20%, but remains the same in April to May, so for the next year, a price rise is expected. What those 20% represent? I wouldn't like to comment on this. I believe that Tomas has his own opinion about this, and we had a debate on this. Except for 2017, this trend has been repeating itself. So the conclusion is that last year, the price has dropped by 20%, standard 20% compared to the previous year. So purely in statistical terms, we could expect very similar prices next year, judging by the prices of the previous year. And this slide is for you to remind about one particular thing on the market, why some market players have forgotten about it, that is index transactions.
We have very few indexed contracts that have been made, and this is the type of contracts which have very short duration, and their price is related to spot market price. And from this graph, it seems that we should take a close look at the red line, and the price of the red line is represents those several fixed transactions that have been made in comparison with the spot market. If the buyer wants to have a small group of suppliers who are capable of concluding long-term contracts, but he wants to go back to the spot market trends, then it seems it is a good solution to this issue. And they also reflect, and it also reflects the market trends that have been forming over the past years. And this particular solution may solve a lot of issues for buyers who don't want to have large groups of suppliers. Let's say they don't want to have 10 or 20 suppliers, but they want to have a changing price contract that is linked to the spot market. And the last slide. This heating season for buyers was very calm. And to a certain extent, this calmness is deceiving. The situation after the start of the war in Ukraine has stabilized, and it may seem that the problems have been resolved, or rather the problems are not as huge as right after the start of the war. However, uh, this impression might be wrong, and I would like to remind you that you should not limit yourself to the present. You should recall that it is very dangerous to rest on the trends from the past. You have to keep diversifying your portfolios. The last year, for all buyers, was brought losses, and Baltpool provided the opportunities to basically receive the money immediately, not after 30 days, as it is indicated in the contract. Basically, the money arrives nearly the next day after the issuing of invoice and putting together equality certificates. So the number of factoring contracts has increased manifold, and that reflects a poor situation of on the supply side. This is a threatening situation, and just and as I was saying, it is not as calm as it may look. Maybe suppliers feel calm, but not the buyers. And yet again, let me remind you that last season was very mild. It was very calm, and there were certain other factors. For example, we didn't had any extreme frosts, and we didn't. And we also have large warehouses that of material for export, and they help to amortize to basically to soften the effects in case of high frosts. Maybe it may seem that this was quite risky, but one way or another, we have managed to escape any disasters. So I'm saying this just to encourage you to diversify, and continue diversifying. It will increase your flexibility. So that this is the end of my presentation, and we are now moving to a more interesting part. Uh, Yes, but before we move to foreign markets, we have some questions from the audience. Do you know what the percentage long-term contracts, how much, what is their share in the market, minus the Vilnius Code Generation Plan? Well, I will not be able to provide the answer to this question because I was not prepared to do that. But let's have a look. A supplier had 15% of the market, and probably we can make calculations very easy. I think that it may go down to 30. In the season 24-25, how much biomass or how much biomass imports imported into Lithuania? Well, as far as I know, we have brought biomass from Latvia, and those contracts, these contracts, I don't know how even to call them, how to qualify them, but these are the contracts that are allowed to be concluded in the according to the option contract rules. I think that it may come up to maybe 5%, but I wouldn't be able to be more specific because we have to take into account the contracts of Vilnius cogeneration plant. Maybe we have colleagues from Vilnius cogeneration plant. Maybe they can provide this information in the chat box. And if this information is important, we will find out. The prices for biomass is nearly the same as the prices for raw material. Do you see the threat of suppliers going bankrupt? Yes, indeed, we do see this risk, and there are a lot of discussions going on about how to tackle the problem. Well, the situation is as follows. It's like with prices for electricity. During the weekend, the price for electricity is close to zero, and everybody who is generating electricity is not happy with this situation. And we have a similar situation here. And I understand that you are asking about Lithuania, and I think that in Lithuania we have over-invested into production capacities, and that reflects the reality. We have huge capacities, and some players are just forced to participate in the market, and that explains the fall of the prices. And you should be blind not to see that. Bankruptcies, yes, well, uh, bankruptcies will not solve the situation either, because we still have overcapacity in the country. Then they will continue playing their role, and we still have the situation of oversupply. I believe we need to find a physical solution how to reduce capacity in the supply chain. Today, we already see the trends that we have overproduction, and that represents the biggest problem. Perhaps exports could be a solution. What is the profitability of the biomass markets? And you see the raw material prices in the RDB system in real time. No, we haven't tried to assess that. So we have put together a model that allows us to calculate the costs, and we have set forth an interval of prices, or rather a level of prices below which prices would cause problems in the markets. And this year, the prices were fluctuating just about that lowest level. So it is my belief that this calculation reflects the reality more or less correctly. And if, like I said, if the price is below the calculated level, then the situation in the market is very dangerous. If it is above the line, then we can still expect some sustainable development. However, we spoke about this problem last year, and we said that this problem is rooted in the crazy year of 2022, when windfall profits or high profitability made us to make wrong expectations about the future. I think this is what caused the problem, and today we're dealing with consequences. 2 years is not enough to solve the problem. You are forecasting the price for the firewood at 34 euros per cubic meter. this is not a forecast. This is already an actual price, and we see in this forecast that, well, in this forecast, we see the prices that are fixed for firewood every April. I don't know what the price for firewood will be in the future. However, I believe that the price will go up because the economic cycle uh, is an existing phenomena. And I have, for example, production of furniture, uh, boards for furniture. There are certain developments in that area which uh, continue for many years, and despite the reducing prices, we don't see that the economy is going down. So I believe that the price for firewood will be 36 euro, but this is not even a forecast. This is a fact. A question about factoring. Biomass companies, are they also using mm, factoring services or factoring contracts? Maybe only Lithuanian biomass companies are facing problems. Well, I perhaps will not be able to provide statistics, but in percentage-wise, factoring is used by many countries, by all states equally. But if we take the number of suppliers, perhaps percentage-wise, factoring is more popular in Lithuania. But it doesn't mean that only Lithuanians are in trouble. I think that everybody who is using factoring services, they uh, they are facing some problems. The situation is complicated. Do you see the impact of harmonies in the trade market? No, not at the moment, but we will feel that impact. The harmonite is a mm, is an important player, and in Lithuania alone, the use of biomass will increase because of harmonite. And if I understand it correctly, Harmonits will reach its capacity only next year. And this year, we still have, they still have some problems with society, with communities, and they have to solve them. And therefore, but I don't believe that Harmonit will have a negative impact on prices. And the last question for Vaidas, and we still have a few other speakers. How do you see the supply of biomass in 2025, 24, 25? Will have suppliers been respecting their contracts? Well, as I said, this year was relatively calm. And if you have a look at the response of buyers to the biomass that was supplied, I'd say that there were no major conflicts or developments, and the year was calm. The season was calm. Nothing to report, so to speak. However, the dominant problem was related to the intrigue that was caused by increased profits at Vilnius electricity generation power plants. And we still have no clear answers what caused those price changes, and we still haven't seen any solutions to the problem. And This development, I think, has started in the previous season, and I don't think that the situation has been resolved.
I will switch to English language as our next speaker is coming from Latvia. And I would like to welcome Māris Kānītis, who is head of business Latvia at Adven Latvia. Māris brings practical experience from the energy supply side, overseeing biomass-based heat generation and procurement. His role gives him an unique perspective on long-term energy transition goals and the real-life dynamics of fuel sourcing and pricing in Latvia. So, Māris, welcome.
Hello, everyone. As Justina already said, my name is Māris Kānītis, and I'm a country head of Latvia, Adven Latvia business. Today, I want to talk with you about the partnerships, what we have with the Baltpool, and what we have the experience to work together. And but before that, I just want to give you some insight about what the Adven company is. So, who we are? Uh, Adven is an energy group company driving the energy transition by defining and implementing sustainable and competitive energy and infrastructure solutions. So, in our daily operations, we combine this global cross-border cooperation and an experience together with this local knowledge to provide the best possible solution to our customers. And of course, it wouldn't be the presentation without some numbers. That's the reason why I have added here some numbers as well. And so we have more than 50 years experience across the Nordics and also the Baltics. For right now, not in Lithuania, for right now in Estonia and Latvia. And we operate more than 350 sites. So, and there is a different kind of solutions also based on the biomass, based on also recycled fuels, waste energy plants, and also geothermal energy solutions on a lot of others. So energy volume, we have 6 terawatt hours in total, and as one of the part of our business is the DH, then we have also more than 100 cooperations with the municipalities. But what we really do, and here is two related but different business models where we are operating. So the first one is this energy as a service model, where we are addressing the service to the industry and the real estates. So we provide also our customers in that segment is like a pulp and paper companies, chemical and process companies, and also the food and beverage companies who need some different kind of energy sources, like also the cooling, heating, or steam production, or water treatment. This is the solutions what we provide in that business segment. And the second one is the DH. This is more or less traditional DH, as we all, I hope, know. We are taking care of the production assets. We taking care also about the networks and also about the heat supply to DH customers. But in some ways, we also have some quite good synergies between these two businesses, because we use also this opportunity to sell this waste heat from the industry to the DH networks. So in both business models, our ability is asset management, project execution, fuel supply, operations, and maintenance, and that drives us to provide the customer very good service. So here is some also the numbers about our climate and environmental targets, what we have set in our strategies. So first, on top of we can see what is our target is to reduce this CO2 or emissions by 50%, comparing to 2019 result. And in 2040, we would like to see the company where we operating 100% with the renewable resources or recycled fuels. That is the target for 2040. And where we are for right now, here we can see the statistics for the 2023, because the 2024 is still we plan to, okay, here we can see also the statistics for the 2024. And we already see we have reached this share of renewable and recycled fuels already 85%. And also in 2024, we see we have already increased, because we are doing the constant investments to the transition from the fossil fuels to renewables. Very shortly also about the operations in Latvia. Despite the fact that we are a part of global group, in Latvia we have also our own targets and ways how to reach those. We are providing district heating solutions in 3 municipalities in Latvia: Valmiera, Cēsis, and Sigulda. And in total production level is around 155 gigawatt hours. And we employ 50 employees. But as I mentioned in previous, we use a lot of these cross-border cooperations with other colleagues in other countries. In 7 years, when Adven operates in Latvia, we have invested in more than 30 projects. Total investments is around 20 million euros, and we also use this opportunity to receive the EU funds for these transition projects, and we have received 6 million also as a subsidies for the investments. And here it is. I would just continue about this. What is our collaboration with Baltpool? And during our collaboration with Baltpool, our partnership model has changed significantly, I would say. We joined to the Baltpool system in 2020 already. However, we can say we were like a very passive user. And in the beginning, we use only as to follow the statistics and participate in regular seminars about some price trends and also industry trends about the wood chips and so on. But we changed our approach in 2022. We started the first transitions in a system of Baltpool, and from conducting the agreements, let's say from this direct long-term or heating season agreements, we moved to the Baltpool side by side. And for today, I can say that this is the first full heating season when we use the 100% Baltpool as a platform where we are doing our purchases for the biomass. And but what is the why we joined the Baltpool? There were quite clear thing. Let's say the things why we choose to join it, and we just wanted to also to simplify the fuel procurement, because our critical mass of the biomass boilers where we operating was enough, just to thinking about how we can to simplify our fuel procurements to make it more in automated way, how we can in the same time provide a data collection about our fuel deliveries and that stuff. And that was one of the things why we joined. Another one was this compliance with the regulatory requirements, because in similar as Lithuania, in Latvia also this DH market is regulated, and this was very important just to be sure that this kind of ocean procedures, what happens in the Baltpool platform, is based on in the market conditions, and this is something what also accept the regulator, local Latvia state regulator, and it is so, and that was another one reason. And the third reason it supports Advent sustainability goals, because we are moving, let's say, as I previously mentioned, that we do this transition from the fossil fuel to the bio or other solutions. And we need to ensure that in all of this chain, we have a very good partners where we can trust, and I think especially for right now, the buying the wood chips from the platform, we getting the data, and in that way, that's also support our goals just to track also this data and make the decisions based on the data. And this open also the opportunities for to develop the service to service model. What does it mean? So that means we could combine different databases, our databases together with the Baltpool system to automate more things like scales together with the Baltpool system, and also our ERP data would somehow connected with the Baltpool system. We could to somehow to manage the data what we have available and also improve this service to service model in more deeper way. But then this when the renewable energy directive came into force, we needed to find some solution which would allow us to comply with the requirements of this directive, and then we also find that the red BP could be very good opportunity to use it because we already use the Baltpool system. So and that's the way we started to use this also to purchase the bio with this red BP certificates as well. And there is this kind of benefits what we already getting, and we see this fruits already in this heating season. So this complies with the renewable energy directive and complies to also local legislation what we have in Latvia. This ensures the sustainability verification by experts. So we trust to our partner Baltpool that they are verifying and also making sure that this justification documentation is provided by the suppliers, and that is done by the experts. We don't have to let's say to use the time of our time to for these verifications, because this is done by the system owner Baltpool, and that end of day it reduced the administrative workload what we can use for some other things. And end of day, the cost and time saving, I think that's the very big important thing for nowadays. Especially we can freeze up our regional time managers time, and end of day we can focus on our core business, what is the energy production, and this sustainability requirement fulfill. We can ask also to support the Baltpool and with the red BP system. For right now, it works, I think, quite very well, and we are very satisfied with this cooperation together with Baltpool. That's all from my side for right now. Thank you for the listening.
Thank you, Māris. And we have two questions from the audience. So first one will be, are you seeing stronger regional cooperation or fragmentation in the Baltic biomass market right now?
Yeah, it depends on what is, especially if we are talking the region where we operating, especially in Latvia, we have quite many suppliers around us already, but I think in the future, if it can be possible that we already have deliveries also in this heating season from Estonia, from Lithuania as well in this heating season. So I think it can be wider cooperation also in the future, but it depends on also the distance from the site where you need to bring the wood chips. I think that's the key.
Mm-hmm. And the next one, which risks do you perceive as most pressing in the current biomass supply chain? Logistics, storage, regulatory changes?
I think this regulatory change, it is a big risk, but we have to we have to think about what is the probability for today of some regulation change. But this is something what we can impact very limited. So this is something what can decide the EU, but for the right now, yeah, that's availability. I would say for the resource is quite high. If we look at the export data, what we have at least in Latvia, there's a lot of companies and suppliers who work only on export today, and that shows this kind of also potential to utilize this resource locally as well. So,
Thank you, Māris. So we're about to dive into a next big topic, the ever-evolving European power market. And to guide us through this complex landscape, we have Hugo Birkelund, co-founder and CEO at Montel EQ. Being an expert on the energy landscape, specializing in market intelligence, power pricing, and predictive analytics, at Montel EQ, Hugo helps energy companies make sense of complex market signals by combining data variables into timely trading insights. So, Hugo, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Justina and Baltpool, for inviting me. I must say I was a bit surprised when I was contacted for this. I'm not at all an expert on biomass. That said, however, we have deep experience in putting up and making up analysis platform. In fact, the platform that you're looking at now, we created together with Montel in starting 2017. Before that, we were at Marketskraft, now Volue Insight. So with the topic mentioned that I'm going to guide you through where you can find information and maybe what is most relevant for you on this platform and others. That makes sense. So without much further ado, basically, why is this important to you, I believe? And a small disclaimer before I start. This is not a sales pitch. I'm using our platform to show you what you can, but basically for our clients throughout Europe, thousands and thousands, having access to correct, timely updated data is crucial for their business. I think this maybe is not been that at the forefront of the biomass market, but I think it will come because it gets more and more interlinked with other markets. Power markets, heating is relevant, gas market is relevant. So what should you look for, either on the platform I'm showing you now, Montel EQ, or Volue Insight, Thomson Reuters, Bloomberg, whatever? Well, what are we doing? Well, we pull together every bits and pieces of the information that's related to demand and supply side. And then we put that together in a price formatting context. We do forecast the price forecast for the power. You see the ones we have now today on this current page for Lithuania. You see the yellow graph going back here is the historical prices, and this is going forward. This is maybe too detailed for you guys, but there's a lot here that I'm pretty sure is relevant. So what does it mean? Well, if you are going to put this together yourself, you will, first of all, spend a lot of time. It will be much more costly than simply buying it, yes. So how can you use it? Well, before I start showing what is here, you can use the platform, either ours or somebody else, or you can take the data over here at Find Data. This is how we organize it, and integrate it directly into your system. So this could be on a Python client, maybe that is beyond where you are quite on an organizational side right now. However, Excel is a widely used system, and basically by downloading either our Excel integrator or our competitors, you will get all the information you need. The easiest way to find what is actually relevant here is simply to take you to a tour. Even though I haven't been able to follow in details, heating season is important. I'm not all that unfamiliar with that. And heating season is extremely important for power market as well. So we pull in an enormous amount of weather information that is readily available for you. There are, for you guys that are on the short term, if you scroll down to the bottom here, you'll find that there are many alternative weather forecasts. The sad story, you might say, is that there is no best forecast out there. Some of the weather forecasters may object to that, but with 25 years of experience, my and our experience is that no one of these guys are the best. They differ, and they differ what they forecast, which variable, where they're forecasting in your area or the rest of Europe, or also over the year. Our strategy is to provide multiple forecasts. So if you need heating forecasts and be able to pull that, you can pull that for either our platform or others. I'm sitting 1 hour ahead of you, so it's 10:08 my time. The next forecast is coming in is like this. I can't go into the details, but of course we can set up a demo for more details on this, either in cooperation with Baltpool, or you can contact me directly. Another way of looking at weather, which we do that I think is highly relevant for you, is to look at the historical. And basically, we have converted the weather into fundamental signals. That is why we on this side call it fundamental climate. And it basically tells us what can potential Mother Nature throw at us in terms of consumption, load, in wind power production, and solar. And I just simply clicked off Lithuania, and we can look at how that look for Lithuania. Well, basically, not going into the details, your power market has been oversupplied. I can simply see that wind and solar in Lithuania has been higher than your complete total demand. And this used to be a very, very rare occasion and statistical incident. Now it is every day and is going to continue. Why is that relevant? Well, it's relevant because when the power market fluctuates, like we see here, this is the fundamental side of this. This is a balance. Basically, on this day, Tuesday, yesterday, 1 o'clock, you had more power, 500 megawatts, more than you needed. What happens to the power price then? Well, it plummets. So, how is that related to weather? Well, you can scroll down and see how consumption is affected, how wind is increasing. This is actually why we have this very peculiar situation. And down here on temperature. In fact, this shows you a consumption-weighted temperature for whole of Lithuania. It could be any country in Europe and the other countries that has been included in the demos here. Basically, going back here, if I scroll down here, you are at a 43-year low in temperature now, since 1980 and on. This is also including the spatial dimension. It's a lot of this point here. So how warm could it be? Well, you can have a nice summer day in Lithuania as well. 20 degrees, I would be happy to have that where I live in Norway 1. That's basically a summer day where I live. But you could also have like down here. So why is this relevant? Well, it gives you the ability to understand what could potentially happen here. Most traders, most guys that don't have this, they look 2 or 3 years back. In fact, there's a saying in the power market that's man's memory in terms of meteorology is 2 to 3 years. We and our the system here enables you to see much further back. You can also, we comprise this into forecasts as well, so you can see this much longer into the future and see the full year, what is the spread. These data and other data are easily available on our platform and others as well, where you can pull out and make much more complete analysis of what could happen on your side. You said that your heating season was where you had a degree days. You can easily calculate the degree days out of this as well. So this is one way of using this information as well. Everything is there. If I scroll to the top again, so we also have meteorology over here with weather maps, daily comments, 4 weeks comment, and then seasonal comments. Well, if you are in the future market and want to understand what's going on, you probably know that the traders, they look ahead and they look at this. They may believe in it or not. I'm not a big fan of long-term forecasts. The average forecast model on weather has a skill in until 4 to 5 days. But that's not the point in terms of trading. If the traders get a signal that this is going to be an unusual warm, unusual cold, whatever, they will trade according to you. Even if you're not trading, you can follow this with one click. It is as simple as that. And this is highly skilled analysts and meteorologists sitting at SMHI, the Swedish Met Office. We have a fantastic cooperation with those guys. Brilliant people. Other stuff that I would look into that might be a bit exotic, maybe. Well, it's not exotic for me to go into hydrology. Where I come from, Norway, I'm sitting here, by the way, Norway, hydrology can take out 90 to 95% of the power production. So if you don't know how hydrology affects the power market, you're not in the power market. When you go further south and maybe east as well, this connection gets diluted, but it's still there. So if I now make a short click, I simply pull in, mark the whole Nordic area. I'm simply going to show you something really, really cool. This is the hydrological balance. Well, not to go into the details on that, but it basically shows what is the balance compared to the seasonal normal, what you should normally expect. And with that, we mean if the balance system is in balance, it's 0. Now we have a surplus of 10 terawatt hours. That is twice the consumption on biomass in Latvia last year. I learned from this presentation. What does it mean? Well, it means that the power prices in the Nordic area is going to be pushed downwards simply because the hydro producers need to get rid of that water. They will produce more power during the coming months and spring and summer compared to that they usually do. Well, higher supply of power means lower price. Simple as that. Getting back to the trader mind again, many traders think that what happened last year or year before would happen again. Well, looking at the history, or here you simply can click on history and you will see that compared to last year, where we have a deficit, meaning the opposite price impulse from hydro, today is like up here. It's the other way. So the traders that bank on the last year to repeat itself or simply dare to go blind, well, he's in for a problem. And you can find this here. You will also find comments on this on our platform and others as well. And look at this, it can get as high as this. This is price completely fall through. And it happened in, if I look down here, it happened in 2020. So you don't have to go that far back. So mind you, be aware of other price impulses than what you get from the gas market, which has dropped tremendously, which would get from the temperature as well, and so on. There's so many things that you can simply, without some few clicks, find and follow. And I'm seriously advising clients to take a look at that. And yes, there's a subscription attached to this with our company and others as well. But you should look at this from what was said from the speaker before me. what is its time saved and what's its cost saved. You can save yourself a lot of cost here. So we are also putting up a medium-term price forecast. It is not yet launched for Latvia. It will come, and also for all of these countries here. But as you can see down here, it is not completed in a commercial available. But if I click on poll, so you can see how this will look, you will get a full forecast of all the power contracts. Well, power competes with biomass as the others. Obviously, you will also on the same page here be able to see what is the marginal costs and dark and spark spreads. If you don't know what that is, we can talk about that later. But it's really easy concept for comparing how the gas and coal, including the EUA, the emission rights, add to the cost, and you can compare that to the power prices. Another thing that I will look at is that we also provide a complete power balance. Well, what does it mean? That is demand and supply for the power market with all of these price-dependent production, included biomass. So there's a forecast here. Historical data is relatively available, and also forecast of this. In this model, it's also a forecast of gas and coal and EUA and whatnot that goes in. So there might be that by starting to look into this or other platforms, you will find a lot of information that is relevant. And finally, before I show you where you can really dive into this yourself, I want to show you something that is really cool from my side as well, carbon. What does it mean? Well, one of the main advantages with biomass from a consumer side is that it's not included in the UA system. It's net zero. It can be argued, but it is by definition. So on our platform, we have a carbon sector where you can look at carbon from a pure emission over lifetime and also within EUA. So if I click on Lithuania, you will find the forecast we make for you guys, and also look at our forecast and the recent history. But this goes far beyond, because you can actually go down here and see this over a longer period and do this. If you want to make your point towards a customer, an industrial customer you have, you can calculate what would be your emissions from, say, a power usage. Your would be zero, so this would be additional. There's a cost issue added to this, but there's also something called being carbon aware. And I think that is a phenomenon that's going to grow tremendously, has been that. I'm in Germany now, they have been carbon aware for 20 years. In the Nordic areas, particularly Norway, we haven't been that aware of that on the consumer side, but it is coming. And I think that if it is not already with you, it will come. This enables you to make those calculations on concrete business. You simply add in the consumption, power consumption they otherwise would save or as an alternative, and this will simply pull out the emissions they would pull. Over last year, this year, last 6 years, or whatever. This is actually live, so you can go back and also see what was the history and also making forecasts. I think there's something here that could be utilized. So before ending, I think I'm overstretching my time here. Where can you find this? Well, if you go in here, I have to move some stuff that is put on my screen that you can't see. Let's see. Yeah, so curve search. If you can, of course, be restricted by the presentation we make for the power sector, or you can pull this data out in Excel. And just by chance, I found by I start writing biomass, it turns out that I didn't knew that we were actually pulling every bits and pieces that we can of data on the biomass market. Clicking on individual countries, boom, you have those guys. So it's there, and if you use an integrator with Excel, you have it all. You can build up whatever that platforms or dashboards you want. Yeah, and I forgot to say that. Of course, we have future markets throughout Europe. Unfortunately, there's not one in Lithuania on the power side, but basically here you have all the information. Extremely hard data to come by, but basically here put it up in a manner that makes sense. If you want to see what will be the quarters on gas, and I was talking about the marginal cost here. This is not the blue. This is the marginal cost of gas, producing power with gas, and this is by coal. And you see the power price in the middle here. Point is, this affects your market. I'm not an expert on the biomass market, but I'm pretty sure as you have a competitive surface to these energy carriers, this is information that is paramount for you to have. So there's an enormous amount of information out there. My best advice would be look into the opportunity to get one professional. We take care of that on the Montel side. It could be, as I said, other vendors as well, so that you don't have to go to Montel. The advantage by Montel, very, very quick, is of course that they also have the news. This is other platforms that you will be get available news. Your SysPower, that's SKM, which is widely known in your area, and other services as well. But that was a short commercial message. Let's take off that hat and get back into the biomass and the need for you for data. Thank you for your attention, guys.
Thank you, Hugo. And we have one question for you from the audience. Which early signals or data inputs are most often overlooked by market participants when anticipating shifts in the power or fuel markets?
I would say it's a wide array, and I'm going to skip the geopolitical stuff because come on, it's hopeless to make assessment on that. We have a lot of people attached to that and they follow that, but they're basically caught off guard always. So let's skip that. Weather-wise, I think I spent some time on this over here on fundamental climate. Because I think, as I mentioned, people have a tendency to look too short, to have a too narrow time frame. What can actually happen is very, very wide. Let's go into Latvia again and look at what I just showed you. This is the temperature rise. Of course, it's a difference between if the temperature is 0 or 20 degrees. And this is hourly resolution, but you can pull out this and you will see that still there's a colossal variation here. So that is one thing. I think also on the power market, also maybe on the biomass market, you simply overlook that because they're so hard to come by. But that information with us, our and also Volume Insight, I was instrumental building up that platform before we left in 2017. So I know that there's a phenomenal hydro page there as well, and that you basically everything we do. People have a tendency to look at hydro that is a bit distant and then, okay, what happened there last year will happen this year as well. Well, it never do, almost. It always varies. And if I simply take the advantage to go into France here or the German market, Germany is not big on hydrology, but France and these areas down here is big on hydrology. And when these guys market shifts, it shifts Poland and through Denmark and Sweden and Poland, you get affected on your power market, which basically is a large competitive space to your source. So why is this relevant? Well, if I go in here on hydrology and simply look on this again, the historic page here. Last year, we are now here. Last year, there was a huge surplus in France, creating a pressure down on the prices. Until quite recently, it was a huge deficit. That has been evened out because of precipitation. However, this is actually a price signal. And also that this has evened out, but also the fact that, yet again, on my suspicion, and also talking to literally thousands of traders and analysts over the years, they have a too short time frame in what they look. These weather-driven system is far more volatile than you think, and even if you simply start looking at some of these days, let's jump back to your area as well. This is a 40-year low in residual load in Lithuania. What has happened? Well, the weather hasn't been more variable than the last 40 years since 1980. And we start our statistics in 1980 because before that, you can't compare it. But wind capacity and solar capacity has been steadily growing, making the effect or pulling out effects. And now I simply pull on growth, and this is demand. This is how the wind and solar has grown in Lithuania. And here you see this white line is actually the residual load. That is the load that would be left when you have taken out wind and solar. This is overlooked, that this will continue, because if we continue to build out. And finally, I take an awful lot of time here, but basically also, when it blows in Lithuania and those areas, it has a nasty tendency to blow in the other areas as well. So our expansion of wind and solar has created this enormous, like a harmonica, let's just pull outs. So you have an oversupplied power market in all Europe, basically, at the same time. So the variation that you have now also from your wind is actually exacerbated by having the same oversupply in other markets and on the supply when that happens, if it makes sense. But you can see that if you start pulling out this information. And finally, at least on the consumption side, I think there's a huge tendency to simply only look at temperature. There are many factors that we pull in on our side. Like heating is one thing, cooling is of course not relevant but you have chilling, and also, well, chilling effect is important. That's the combined effect of temperature and wind. It's readily available in our database and others as well, and you can include it in your modeling if you so choose to. And we are here to help you if you want to see how we do that. That's not a secret.
Thank you, Hugo. So, thank you for valuable insights. And it's about time to move to our last part of the event and panel discussion. So, as a reminder, today with us is Vaidotas Jonutis, Head of Trade at Baltpool, Tomas Jorudas, Head of Commerce at Baltpool, Māris Kānītis, Head of Business Latvia at Adven Latvia, and Hugo Birkelund, co-founder and CEO at Montel EQ. Welcome once again. So, 15 years ago, Lithuania's gas prices were directly linked to Platts fuel oil prices, a pattern that held across much of Europe. Over time, those markets decoupled, and today we see that as a major structural win for the sector. For a long time, there was a similar invisible pressure for biomass to follow natural gas pricing, even if they weren't officially linked. But now we see that dynamics have changed, and biomass prices are clearly beginning to form independently, influenced but no longer shadowing other fuels. So there's the first question linked to that, yeah? Looking ahead to the next heating season, do you expect this trend of decoupling to continue, or will we see a renewed convergence with the other fuel markets like gas and electricity? Hugo and Māris, what do you think about that?
You want me to go first?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. It's a bit difficult when you're online here. So sorry, I don't want to speak on top of anyone. Well, this coupling, I think there might be some lesson learned from when the period when gas was linked to oil prices. A lot of that linkage was actually created out of convenience, and also there were, of course, there's a competitive surface between those, but not that close, but out of convenience. And we had a discussion at least 15 years back, and I'm not saying that I remember the exact timing, but it was re-emerging at time. Will that break? And some of us at the Marketskraft at that time, and also mine, was that of course it will break. It's artificial. It's out of convenience, and now we see what happened. It came much later than we thought, so from that perspective, we were dead wrong, but it has broken, and I think this will happen as well with the biomass market. Without having detailed insight into that, but when I look into some data on the market developments running up to this conference, the professionalism and simply that we have this kind of conversation now will make people aware of price effects that affects the biomass market, like hydro, like weather, a bunch of things. Not to speak about the geopolitical stuff that really can't be foreseen closely, at least not the terrible disaster we had in 2000 with the war in Ukraine. But taking that out, I think that will go on. We will see statistical correlation, maybe, but the D-link is there. It's not that physical as it has been, I would expect. See if this argument flies when you get into more competent people on biomass.
If I can comment, this I believe I agree that the influence has been decreased if we compare the previous times, but still we shouldn't look at the biomass as a single island. So there will be some impacts with other market trends as well in the future as well. But what we can see at least also for this heating season, it's true the biomass shows its own price fluctuation trends, and this is dependent on demand and the weather conditions. This is something what we have seen also in the January, let's say the trading results when it was atypically high because of the weather conditions. So these weather conditions for the biomass plays a bigger role than before maybe. That's my thought on this.
So, what's driving this shift, and how does biomass remain competitive among other energy sources in the Baltic Sea region? Tomas, any views on that?
How to say? Biomass is one of the energy source. So it's always competing with another, but the strongest point of biomass is that this is local source and this is renewable. So it will always remain competitive in my mind.
Thank you. With European Union sustainability and greenhouse gas reduction rules becoming stricter, what risks and opportunities do you see for biomass as a fuel, and how a business is preparing for this change? Mari.
I am muted. So I believe these regulations will become more strictly, but from the other hand, I believe this is a right way to go. Just to be sure that we have this, as Tomas already mentioned, that this is our big advantage, that we have this availability of this source as biomass, but we have to use that in a very wisely way and also in a sustainable way, and that is, I think, the key. And if we would use the more or develop this kind of systems where we can track also the biomass sustainability, it shouldn't be the problem in the long term to use the biomass and fulfill the requirements.
And Tomai, what structural differences do you observe between Lithuania, Latvia, and the wider Baltic region when it comes to biomass sourcing, pricing, and market maturity?
Good question. I would say that our Baltic market is the most efficient market in Europe. This is the most liquid market and most flexible market. Actually, I'm really surprised how flexible we are to the demand and supply side, and how quickly we adapt to the new reality. So in my opinion, we have really healthy and flexible market on biomass here.
Mari, would you have anything to elaborate on that while being on the buyer side of the biomass?
Could you please repeat the question, the last question? What was-
Sure. So basically, questions are about structural differences which we observe between Lithuania, Latvia, and the wider Baltic region when it comes to biomass sourcing, pricing, and market maturity. And you being as a biomass buyer in Latvia, how do you see these differences?
Yeah, it's hard to say for me because we don't have operations in Lithuania for right now. But if I look at least from the results or the tradings, what results of the ocean procedures in the system of Baltpool, then I see there is quite a lot of already common things. But however, I have already told today as well, this availability of this resource we have quite high, and we are still doing a lot of export of this fuel, and this shows this high potential to utilize that locally. And this is the opportunity, I think, what we have to use in the future as well.
Thank you. And looking on the wider European power markets perspective and learnings from that, Hugo, what practical steps could biomass buyers and sellers take now to better manage price risks ahead of for the next heating season?
We have a term in Norway saying that you should never learn the cow how to milk, and it basically, if you are facing experts, be careful. But from what I've learned from what we have done in the power market, in the gas market, in EUA and whatnot, getting informed and stay informed and make sure that you are efficient in what you are looking for. That is important, and I'm not now advising people to head for and subscribe to EQ. Look what is out there. There are other providers as well, but make sure that you build a sustainable or a robust information source. You will probably not find the perfect web page or site for everything on biomass. It's not that big, so nobody has done it as far as I know. It could be there. But you can easily do this via an Excel integrator on our side or others, where you build up not only what is actually in front of you right now, but think a bit wider. Look at the bigger picture, take deeper historical view, and is what I'm looking at now really an outlier or something that I haven't seen before? In most cases, in my experience, is that when you have outliers, we have seen it before. There are no black swans. We simply have not been paying attention to the history that we can learn. And also, at least on our side, we make projections into the future with the spread, either weather spread or all the historical weather. It's a lot to be learned from this. Can you really take the lowest, let's say, lowest demand? Can you supply the highest demand? Make those calculations. I think the guys who stayed prepared to that will prevail, and the others could perish simply because they're taken out by some surprise things that they actually could have prevented by staying informed.
Thank you. And the last question that I have, I would like to really ask to all the participants of the panel discussion, like really get the insights from the different perspectives. So with growing weather and market volatility, which indicators should biomass players prioritize when planning their trading on or sourcing strategies? So maybe let's start with Māris.
Yeah, I think Hugo already mentioned, I think that data is very important in nowadays, just to analyze and make the decision based on the data, and use this digital monitoring and forecasting tools wider. And I think that would be the key for or the suggestion what you should to keep take into account for creating your sourcing strategy for the next heating season or next season or in a long run. But also the diversity of supply sources also, I think this is another one thing what should take into account.
Thank you. Hugo?
Yeah, I would be very careful by thinking that there's one or two things that I would look out for. What maybe makes sense now is to make a good old-fashioned stress test on your sustainable what can your business actually sustain in terms of changes in prices here. The, the war in Ukraine must end, and it will end. Maybe not on the terms that any European are happy with, but it will end. How fast will the gas market supply from Russia resume? Maybe never. I think that's an extreme guess, but it will take time. That will cause an enormous effect on the gas prices if it happens. That is relevant for any provider of power, regardless what it is. Yeah, so that's probably one of the stress tests I would do if I were in this market, and it's doable. We know what the bottom price was, and so on.
Okay, and Vaidotas, how about from Baltpool's perspective as the head of trades?
It's not easy to answer that question because people are listening us, and maybe it will be advice for someone. From how I understand from Hugo and Mario, and I remember from my because I was a stockbroker in 10 years ago, so I remember only one moment that past results don't guarantee you the future results, and the situation today, from my understanding, is too calm. How to say, to looking at the situation in the market, we understand that we have long holidays, and the market is not volatile, and I think that diversification is the most moment, and the second moment is we need to wait some impacts into the market from we today don't understand that. Maybe electricity prices, maybe gas prices, maybe other geopolitical issue. Today started a war between the India and Pakistan, and this situation, I think, is very, how to say, it's not possible to buy a contract, insurance contract in a biomass. So I think diversification is the best moment to avoid the risks in the future.
Tomas, anything to elaborate on?
Experts can always talk about last time, not about future. Yes. And when we talk about future, everybody are speculating. But I really like the way how Hugo presented data. When you see the point where you are and you see the historical variation. So actually when you are doing informed decision, you feel much better about that, less stressed. And of course, doesn't matter what decision you are making, the diversification need to be in place just in case, to see that today's point is not stable and it might vary both ways.
Thank you. So this is all that we had prepared for today from our side. So thank you everyone for joining us online. So to all the participants, thank you our Māris, thank you Hugo for joining us and bringing valuable insights to our event. We hope today's discussion provided useful perspective and for upcoming season, and see you at the next Baltpool event. Ačiū visiems ir iki kito susitikimo Baltpool renginyje.